They say vampires cannot be poisoned. They are wrong. At 11:47 on a Thursday night in October, Dr. Evandra Thorne stood in a diner that smelled like burnt coffee and broken promises, watching a gun barrel rise toward a stranger's chest. She had $31 in her checking account, $730,000 in debt, 2 years of grief carved into the shadows beneath her eyes, and 6 seconds to decide if one man's life was worth trading for her own. The gun was custom. She saw that immediately. Tactical black polymer, modified barrel, and a cylinder that should not have glowed. But it did. Faint blue-white luminescence leaking through the chamber slots where 4 rounds sat waiting. Not normal ammunition, something else. Something that caught the fluorescent light and threw it back wrong. Evandra Thorne was 42 years old. She had served 4 years as a trauma surgeon in the United States Army. She had operated in field hospitals where the walls shook from artillery. She had held pressure on femoral arteries while helicopters screamed overhead. She had learned to see details other people missed because missing details meant soldiers died on her table. She saw the bullets. She saw the liquid shimmer inside them. She saw the way the shooter's hand was steady, professional, practiced. She saw the target, a man with silver hair sitting alone in the corner booth, and she saw that he had not moved, had not flinched, was simply watching the gun with eyes the color of winter fog, waiting. 6 seconds, 5. Evandra's body moved before her brain could finish the thought. This is what happened when the Vampire King watched a woman he had never met take 4 bullets meant for him. The night had started like every night for the past 712 days. Evandra left St. Anne's Medical Center at 11:15, after a shift that should have ended at 7, but stretched into double digits because the other attending had called in sick, and somebody had to close the stab wound in bed 4, and somebody had to set the broken femur in bed 7, and somebody had to be the one who kept moving when everyone else had gone home. That somebody was always Evandra. She drove her 2011 Honda Civic, the one with 240,000 miles and a passenger door that only opened from the outside, through streets that glistened with October rain. Chicago looked different at night, sharper, more honest. The downtown lights bled into puddles on Michigan Avenue, and she could see her reflection in the wet pavement, fractured and distorted, a woman who had stopped recognizing herself sometime around month 6 of her daughter's treatment. Nora had been 9 years old, leukemia, acute lymphoblastic, diagnosed on a Tuesday in March, dead on a Saturday in June, 14 months later. The funeral bill had been $8,400. The medical debt had climbed to $721,000 by the time they stopped sending invoices and started sending collection notices. Evandra had sold her car, then bought this one for $900. She had sold her furniture. She had sold her mother's wedding ring. She had picked up extra shifts and weekend coverage and holiday pay, and it still was not enough. The math did not work. It would never work. But she kept showing up anyway, kept suturing wounds and setting bones and saving lives she could save because she had failed to save the one that mattered most. Her mother was in a memory care facility in Naperville. Alzheimer's, progressive, the kind that stole a person piece by piece until nothing familiar remained. The bill was $4,200 a month. Evandra called every night at midnight because her mother sometimes had lucid moments around that time. Sometimes she remembered having a daughter named Evandra. Sometimes she remembered having a granddaughter named Nora. Sometimes she remembered neither. Russo's Diner sat on the corner of Harrison and Wells, tucked into the kind of neighborhood where downtown money bled into something rawer. The neon sign outside sputtered between sickly yellow and dead gray. Evandra had been stopping here after late shifts for 3 months now. Coffee was $1.50. Refills were free. The owner, a man named Rico with hands like catcher's mitts, never asked questions when she sat in the back booth and stared at nothing for 20 minutes before driving home. She pushed through the door at 11:28. The bell chimed. Old Terence looked up from his crossword puzzle at the counter, nodded once, went back to his coffee. The night cook was invisible behind the kitchen window, radio playing something low and bluesy that got swallowed by the hiss of the overhead heating. Evandra took her usual spot, booth 6, near the back where she could see the door and the street and convince herself she was just being cautious, not paranoid. That was when she saw him. Booth 12, corner position, back to the wall, eyes on both exits and the kitchen door. The kind of situational awareness Evandra recognized from her years around soldiers, the kind that came from knowing people wanted you dead and had the means to make it happen. He sat perfectly still, not the stillness of relaxation, the stillness of absolute control, like a held breath, like a drawn bowstring. His hair was silver, not gray, silver. It fell past his shoulders, pulled back in a way that should have looked casual, but instead looked deliberate, intentional. His coat was charcoal gray, wool or maybe cashmere, the kind of fabric Evandra had only ever seen in department store windows she never entered. Beneath it, a black shirt, simple, expensive, in the way that true quality never needed to announce itself. On his wrist, a watch with no visible brand. Somehow that made it worse. He had not ordered food, just coffee. Black. The cup sat untouched in front of him, steam no longer rising. He held a phone in one hand, reading something on the screen with an expression that gave away nothing. Evandra felt the hair on the back of her neck stand up. She had learned to trust that feeling in Iraq, when mortars came screaming out of clear skies. Had learned that the body knew things the conscious mind had not yet processed. Threat assessment happening at a neurological level, bypassing rational thought, screaming warnings in the language of adrenaline and elevated heart rate. This man was dangerous. Everything about him said predator, the way he sat, the way he breathed, the way his eyes tracked movement without his head turning, cataloging everyone in the diner with the same clinical precision Evandra used to assess trauma patients. She should have left, should have put $2 on the table, walked out, driven home, pretended she had never seen him. Instead, she watched. Rico came by, coffee pot in hand, and filled her cup without asking. Evandra wrapped both hands around the ceramic, letting the heat bite into her palms. Pain was good. Pain meant she was here, present, still fighting even when fighting felt pointless. The man in booth 12 finished reading whatever message had lit up his screen. He typed a response. 3 words, maybe 4. Then he locked the phone and set it face down on the table with the kind of finality that suggested decisions had been made, irrevocable ones. When he looked up, his eyes swept across the diner. They caught on Evandra for maybe half a second, maybe less. But in that half second, she felt weighed, measured, catalogued, and dismissed. Not with cruelty. With the same detachment a surgeon might look at an X-ray. Data, information, nothing personal. His eyes were pale, too pale, the color of frost on steel, of winter moonlight on snow, and there was something behind them that made Evandra think of wolves, of storms, of things that belonged in dark forests and old stories, not diners that smelled like burnt hash browns. Then he looked away. Evandra exhaled. She had not realized she was holding her breath. She checked her phone. 11:34. She would call her mother at midnight. $4,200 a month. $730,000 total. Nora's hospital room, the machines, the slow decline. All the numbers that defined her life now. Evandra drank her coffee. It tasted like cardboard and exhaustion. Outside, rain began to fall harder. It drummed against the windows in irregular rhythms, blurring the streetlights into watercolor smears of yellow and red. The man in booth 12 answered his phone. He did not say hello, just listened. Then, in a voice that resonated in Evandra's chest like a bass note, low and controlled and carrying an accent she could not place, he said, "The Constantinople Protocol is active. Proceed." He ended the call. Constantinople Protocol. The words meant nothing to Evandra, but the tone meant everything. That was the voice of command, of authority that did not need to be loud because it had never been questioned. The voice of someone who gave orders that people followed, no questions, no hesitation, because the consequences of refusal were not something anyone wanted to discover. Evandra looked down at her coffee. This was not her business. This man, whoever he was, whatever he was involved in, was not her problem. She had enough problems, more than enough. A mountain of debt and a dead daughter and a mother who was forgetting her own name and a body that was running on fumes and spite. She did not need to add mysterious strangers to the list. She was reaching for her wallet when the door exploded inward. Not opened, exploded. Glass and wood, and the November cold came rushing into the diner like something unleashed. The bell above the door did not chime. It screamed, metal tearing, and then it was on the floor in pieces. Evandra's training kicked in before conscious thought. She was already moving, already dropping below the table line, already scanning for exits and cover and threats. Two figures stood in the doorway. They wore long black coats that moved wrong, too heavy, too stiff. Tactical gear underneath, Evandra registered, the kind that stopped bullets. Their faces were hidden behind masks. Not ski masks, something sleeker, more professional, more final. They did not look around, did not scan for witnesses or cameras or security. They stared straight at booth 12, straight at the man with silver hair and winter eyes. And then Evandra saw the guns. Custom tactical pistols, modified barrels, and cylinders that glowed with that same faint blue-white luminescence she had seen in weapons demonstrations in Iraq. Tracers, she had thought then, phosphorus rounds. But this was different. This was wrong. The air inside Russo's turned to concrete. Sound became muffled, distant, like Evandra was underwater. She could hear her own heartbeat, could hear Terrence's sharp intake of breath, could hear the rain outside and the hiss of the heating and the low static from the kitchen radio. She could see everything. The two assassins, perfectly still, weapons raised. The man in booth 12, not moving, not flinching, just watching them with those pale, impossible eyes. Waiting. Terrence, diving behind the counter, his crossword puzzle scattering across the floor. And the guns. The glowing cylinders. 4 rounds in each chamber, 8 total. But the assassins had both weapons trained on the same target. They were not here for a robbery. This was not random violence. This was an execution, professional, planned, funded. The kind of operation that required resources and commitment, and the kind of cold certainty that came from orders given by people who did not make mistakes. Evandra's mind, trained by 4 years of combat medicine, processed the scenario in clinical terms. 2 shooters, 1 target, 8 rounds available, distance approximately 15 feet, angle of fire clear, no cover between weapons and target. The man in booth 12 was going to die. She did not know him, had never spoken to him, did not know his name or his history, or whether he was a good man or a monster or something in between. But she knew what 8 bullets would do to a human body at 15 feet, had seen it in Iraq, had tried to put soldiers back together after ambushes and firefights and IED blasts, had failed more often than she succeeded. This man would not survive. And she did not know why, but in that frozen moment, in that held breath second before violence, Evandra Thorne thought about Nora, thought about the hospital room, the machines, the slow, steady decline, the way she had held her daughter's hand and promised that everything would be okay even though they both knew it was a lie. Thought about the last thing Nora had said, not goodbye, not I love you. Just, Mom, don't be sad. You save people. That's what you do. Evandra had not saved Nora, but maybe she could save this stranger. The decision was not rational. It was not calculated. It was instinct and grief and 2 years of failure all crystallized into one impossible choice. The assassin's finger tightened on the trigger. Evandra screamed, "Get down!" And she jumped. The world became slow-motion clarity. Evandra's body left the booth, hurtling forward, arms outstretched. She could feel every muscle engaging, could feel her heart slamming against her ribs, could taste copper and adrenaline. She saw the man in booth 12's eyes widen, saw recognition flash across his face, not surprise, recognition, like he understood exactly what she was doing and could not comprehend why. She saw the assassins hesitate, just a fraction of a second, just long enough for their brains to process the unexpected variable. She collided with the man just as the first shot cracked through the air. The impact was nothing. He was solid, immovable, like hitting a concrete pillar. But her momentum carried them both sideways out of the booth onto the floor. And the bullets followed. The first one hit her right shoulder. It did not feel like the movies. There was no dramatic entry wound, no slow realization. It felt like being hit with a sledgehammer wrapped in fire. The impact spun her, and she felt bone crack, felt muscle tear, felt something burning spreading from the entry point like liquid metal being poured into her veins. The second bullet punched through her left lung. This one she felt. Felt the air leave her body in a wet, rattling gasp. Felt her chest collapse. Felt her ribs splinter. And beneath it all, that same burning, that same wrong heat that was not just trauma, but something else. Something chemical. Something designed to hurt in ways bullets alone could not. The third hit her ribs, low on the right side. The fourth grazed her heart. Did not pierce it. Grazed. Close enough that Evandra felt her heartbeat stutter, felt the rhythm break, felt her body trying to decide whether to keep fighting or just stop. She hit the floor. The linoleum was cold against her cheek. She could smell industrial cleaner and old grease and her own blood, sharp and copper bright. Could hear the assassin's footsteps, tactical boots on tile, moving forward to confirm the kill. Could hear the man she had just saved, just thrown herself in front of, breathing above her. Not gasping, not panicking, just breathing, controlled and steady, like this was just another Thursday. Evandra tried to move. Her body did not respond. Her right arm was useless, shattered bone and torn muscle. Her left lung was not working. Each attempt at breath brought wet clicking sounds and pain that whited out her vision. She had been shot before. Iraq, 2006, insurgent attack on the field hospital. Single round through the thigh, in and out, clean. Hurt like hell, but she had walked it off, kept working, stitched herself up after the last patient was stable. This was different. This was not just bullets. This was poison. The burning spread through her bloodstream, molten and wrong, and Evandra understood with sudden terrible clarity that she was not going to survive this. The wounds were catastrophic. The poison was worse. Her body was shutting down, systems failing one by one, and there was nothing she could do except lie on the cold floor and watch her vision narrow to a gray tunnel. She had saved him, though. The stranger. The man with silver hair and winter eyes. He was alive. She had bought him maybe 3 seconds, maybe 5, long enough to move, to react, to fight back. Long enough. Nora's voice echoed in her memory. You save people, that's what you do. Evandra's lips moved. She wanted to say something, wanted to tell the stranger he was welcome, or good luck, or run. But her throat was full of blood, and the words would not come. Her vision went dark around the edges. Then the world exploded into motion. The man moved, not human speed, not human strength. One moment he was kneeling beside her, the next he was on the nearest assassin, moving so fast Evandra's eyes could not track it. She heard a sound like wet branches breaking. Heard a scream cut off mid-breath. Heard something heavy hit the floor. The second assassin fired. The shots went wide. The man was already moving, already inside the shooter's guard, and what he did next, Evandra could not see because her vision was failing, tunneling down to pinpricks. But she heard it, heard bones break, heard the gun clatter to the floor, heard silence. Then he was back, kneeling beside her again, and his hands were on her shoulders, gentle despite their impossible strength. Stay with me. His voice was closer now, that same bass resonance, but underneath it, something she had not heard before. Urgency, maybe fear. Do not close your eyes. Do not. Ivandra tried to respond. Blood bubbled from her lips instead of words. The man's expression changed. His eyes, those pale winter eyes, widened. He leaned closer, and she saw his nostrils flare, saw him inhale deeply, and then his face went hard. "Silver," he said, not to her, to himself. "Blessed Silver, 4 rounds." He pulled out a phone, dialed with one hand, the other keeping pressure on her shoulder. The call connected on the first ring. "Hexworth?" The name was a command. "Mercy Hospital, private wing, 10 minutes. Prepare the theater." A pause. Ivandra could hear a voice on the other end, distant, protesting. "I do not care what the covenant forbids." Each word dropped like a stone, cold, final. 10 minutes, Hexworth. If she dies, everyone who delayed her survival dies with her. He ended the call, looked down at Ivandra, and for the first time she saw something in those eyes besides control. Something raw, something almost human. "Why?" he asked quietly. "You did not know me, did not know what I am. Why would you jump?" Ivandra wanted to answer. Wanted to explain about Nora, about failure, about needing to save someone, anyone, just once. But her vision was going dark, and her heartbeat was stuttering, and she could feel her body giving up. The man gathered her into his arms like she weighed nothing. "Then I will not let your sacrifice be meaningless," he said. And the world became motion and darkness, and the distant sound of sirens that would arrive too late. Ivandra had no memory of the journey. Later, she would learn it covered 3 miles in under 4 minutes, that he had moved through alleys and across rooftops, places no human could follow, carrying her like she was something precious and fragile, that he had burned through the last of his strength to keep her alive, those extra seconds, those critical moments when her heart was giving up and her lungs were drowning in their own blood. But in the moment, she was not conscious of any of it. She was drowning, not in water, in pain, in the burning poison spreading through her veins like acid, eating away at her cells faster than her body could replace them, in the knowledge that this was how it ended, not in a field hospital, not saving someone, just bleeding out in a stranger's arms because she had made one last stupid impulsive choice. Her heart stuttered. 1 beat, 2, 3, then silence. When the world came back, it came back in fragments. Fluorescent lights, too bright, stabbing into her retinas. Voices, urgent, speaking medical terminology she recognized from her own training. BP 70 over 40 and dropping. Tachycardia 140 and climbing. Silver content is off the scale. This is enchanted ordnance, military grade. Enchanted. The word did not make sense. Ivandra tried to focus on it, tried to understand, but consciousness kept slipping away like water through her fingers. She felt hands on her body, cutting away her clothes, starting IVs, the sharp sting of needles finding veins. Both lungs compromised. Right shoulder is shattered. Bullet near the heart, we need to... There is no time for surgery. A new voice, older, calm despite the chaos. The silver is spreading too fast. She has minutes, maybe less. Then what do you suggest? A pause. The ritual. Absolutely not. The covenant explicitly forbids. I do not care what the covenant forbids. That voice again, the man from the diner, close now, right beside her. She took 4 bullets meant for me, 4 bullets of blessed silver that would have crippled me for weeks, long enough for my enemies to take my head. This mortal woman saved my life, saved my crown, saved everything I have built in this city for 2 centuries. His voice dropped lower, became something that made the temperature in the room plummet. So you will do the ritual, Hexworth. You will bind my blood to hers, and you will save her life. Or I will find someone who will, and you will spend what remains of your very long life regretting your hesitation. Silence. Then, my lord, if we do this, there will be consequences. Political consequences. The council will call it weakness. They will say, let them talk, steel wrapped in ice. Prepare the ritual. Ivandra tried to open her eyes. Could not. Her body was not responding anymore. She was floating, disconnected, watching from somewhere far away, As machines beeped faster, as her heart rate climbed and climbed and climbed, she felt hands on her wrist. Cold hands. Impossibly cold, like touching ice. Then pain, sharp and bright. A blade cutting into flesh. But not her flesh. Ancient protocols, the older voice, Hexworth, was saying. Words from before Rome, before writing, before humans had names for the things that hunted them in the dark. The temperature dropped further. Evandra could feel it even through the haze of dying, could feel something gathering in the room, something old, something that predated medicine and science and rational thought. Liquid dripped onto her chest, where the bullets had entered, where her heart was struggling to beat. It burned, not like the silver, different. This was ice and fire at once, freezing and searing, and it spread through her body, following her bloodstream, racing against the poison, fighting for territory in veins that were shutting down. The machine screamed. Evandra heard the long, flat tone of a heart monitor going flatline, heard someone shout, heard footsteps running, heard that cold voice close to her ear, speaking a single word in a language she did not recognize but somehow understood. A command, a plea, a demand that death itself retreat. Her heart answered. Thump, one beat, impossible. She was dead. The monitor had said so. Thump. Another, stronger. And then light. Not the sterile white of hospital fluorescence. Not the warm yellow of fire. Gold. Pure molten gold spreading from where that ancient blood touched her chest, racing through her veins like liquid sunlight. It illuminated her skin from within, making her body glow like she had swallowed a star. Hexworth stumbled backward. Impossible, he whispered. The bond should burn red, always red. Vampire blood bonding with human always produces crimson light. This is wrong, a younger voice finished. An assistant, hovering at the edge of Evandra's fading vision. This has never happened before. My lord, what have you created? The man from the diner, the one who had called himself lord, stared at his own wrist, still bleeding. His blood, ancient and dark as old wine, was mixing with something in Eva's system, creating something new. The golden light pulsed brighter with each heartbeat, synchronized with the rhythm returning to her chest, then slowly faded, sinking beneath her skin, but not disappearing. When the glow subsided, thin golden veins were visible beneath Eva's skin. Not blood vessels, something else. A network of light that followed her circulatory system like a second anatomy, like circuitry, like she had become part machine, part magic, part something that had no name in any language. Thump, thump, thump. The monitor erupted back into frantic beeping. The flat tone became rhythm, became life. Evandra gasped, her lungs filled with air that tasted like copper and ash and something else. Something she had no name for, something that tasted like night and winter and centuries. Her eyes opened. The lights were too bright. She blinked, tried to focus, and the world swam into painful clarity. She was on an operating table, surrounded by equipment that looked medical but felt wrong. Too old, too strange. Devices that had never been FDA approved because they predated the FDA by centuries. 3 men stood around her. One wore surgical scrubs and gloves, gray-haired, maybe 60, with eyes that had seen too much and a face that gave away nothing. Hexworth, her mind supplied. One was younger, dark-skinned, holding a tablet covered in charts that made no sense, heart rate graphs that showed her dying and coming back, blood work that displayed numbers in colors that should not exist. And one was the man from the diner. Up close, he was even more striking, even more wrong. His skin was too pale, like he had never seen sunlight. His silver hair was pulled back from a face that looked 40 but felt ancient. And his eyes, those winter fog eyes, were locked on her with an intensity that made it hard to breathe. But they were wide, shocked. He was staring at the golden veins beneath her skin with an expression she could not read. Wonder, fear, something else. "You are alive," he said quietly. It was not quite a question. Evandra tried to speak. Her throat was raw, scraped. She managed a sound that might have been yes. Something flickered in his expression. Relief, or maybe wonder. Or maybe something darker and more complicated. "You were dead for 47 seconds, he continued. His voice was controlled, but she could hear the edges of something beneath it. "Your heart stopped. I brought you back. But you are not what I expected. You are not what any ritual has ever produced." He gestured to the golden light still faintly visible beneath her skin. "You are something new, something impossible." Evandra stared at him, brought her back. Like resurrection was just another item on a checklist, like death was negotiable. She looked down at her body. Her chest was bandaged, but she could see the edges of the wounds through the white gauze. 4 small scars, already closed, already healed, and beneath them those golden veins, pulsing with each heartbeat like bioluminescent circuitry. That was wrong. Bullet wounds did not heal in hours, did not heal in days. She should still be bleeding, should still be dying. "What did you do to me?" The words came out hoarse but clear. The man was silent for a long moment. Then he said, "I saved your life, but in doing so I have changed it, irrevocably. You carry my blood now, 824 years of existence flowing through your veins, but you have changed it as well, made it into something I do not recognize, something that glows gold instead of red, something unique." He glanced at Hexworth, who stepped forward still shaken. "Doctor." "Thorn," Hexworth said carefully, "you were poisoned with enchanted silver, a substance designed to kill supernatural beings. On a human, it should have been instantly fatal. You should not have survived the initial impact, let alone the 47 seconds of clinical death. But I did. Because Lord Constantinos bound his blood to yours, an ancient ritual, forbidden by our laws, forbidden because it creates something that should not exist. But even accounting for the ritual, this," he gestured at the golden veins, "this is unprecedented. This is not how blood bonding works. This is something else entirely." Evandra's chest tightened. "What am I?" Constantinos answered. "Not vampire, not human. Something between, a hybrid. But more than that. Something the ritual was never designed to create. Something my blood has never produced in 5 centuries of existence." The word hung in the air like smoke. Hybrid. Evandra looked at her hands. They were not shaking. They should be shaking. She had been shot 4 times, had died, had been brought back by forbidden magic, and was now apparently glowing gold beneath her skin. Her hands should be trembling with shock and trauma and adrenaline crash. Instead, they were perfectly steady, strong, wrong, and those golden veins pulsed with each heartbeat, visible through the skin like she was transparent. "This is not possible," she whispered. "Neither is jumping in front of bullets for a stranger." Constantino's voice was soft. "Yet you did. So now we both live with impossible things. You are alive. Changed, yes. Different, yes, but alive. And that golden light suggests you are more than just a hybrid. You are something evolution or magic or fate has decided to create. Something I have never seen in 8 centuries of existence." Evandra closed her eyes, tried to process, tried to understand. Vampire, hybrid, forbidden ritual. Golden blood. Words that belonged in fiction, not in operating rooms in Chicago in the middle of the night. But her body knew the truth, could feel it in the way her heart beat too slow, too controlled, in the way sounds were too loud and lights too bright, and she could smell blood in bags 4 rooms away and hear conversations through walls that should have been soundproof. She was not human anymore. She was not sure what she was, but she was alive and glowing. And the man who had saved her, who had broken laws to bring her back, stood watching her with eyes that held centuries of weariness and something that might have been hope. "Rest," Constantinos said finally. "We will talk more when you wake. There is much you need to know, much you need to learn. But for now, just rest. Let your body adjust to what it has become. Evandra wanted to argue, wanted to demand answers, wanted to scream and rage and reject everything that had just happened. But exhaustion pulled at her like a tide. Her eyes closed despite her best efforts. The last thing she heard before darkness took her was Constantino's voice, quiet and almost gentle. "Sleep well, Dr. Thorne. You have earned it. And when you wake, we will begin to understand what you have become. What we have both become, because I can feel it. Your blood changed mine as much as mine changed yours. We are bound now, connected, and I do not yet know what that means." Evandra woke to silence. Not the silence of an empty room, the silence of perfect stillness. No hum of ventilation, no distant traffic, no electronic buzz from medical equipment, just quiet so complete it felt like being wrapped in cotton. She opened her eyes. The room was dark, not pitch black. Her eyes adjusted instantly, pupils dilating wider than should have been possible, and she could see everything, every detail. The grain in the wooden ceiling beams, the weave of the curtains, dust motes suspended in air that was not moving because she could not feel any breeze. She was in a bed, not a hospital bed, a real bed, king-sized, with sheets that felt like they cost more than her monthly rent. The room around her was elegant in that understated way that screamed money. Dark wood furniture, hardwood floors, a single painting on the wall, something old, maybe Renaissance, a woman in blue holding a child. This was not Mercy Hospital. Evandra sat up. The motion was too easy, too fluid. She should have been stiff, should have been in agony. 4 bullet wounds, clinical death. Her body should have been destroyed. Instead, she felt strong, alert. Her muscles responded instantly, precisely, like a machine that had been oiled and calibrated. She looked down at herself. Someone had dressed her in clean clothes. Black cotton pants, gray shirt, both simple and expensive. Her hands were clean, no IV lines. No bandages except for a few white strips across her chest where she could feel the raised edges of scars. Scars that should not exist yet. And beneath the skin she could still see them, those golden veins, fainter now in the darkness, but still there, still pulsing with each heartbeat, still wrong. Bullet wounds took weeks to close, months to scar. She had been unconscious for how long? Hours, days. The door opened. Evandra's head snapped toward the sound, and she saw him before he fully entered. Konstantinos, still wearing that charcoal coat, though now she could see blood stains on the shoulder. Her blood. Dried to brown. Already old. He stopped in the doorway when he saw she was awake. 3 days, he said, answering the question she had not asked. You have been unconscious for 3 days. Your body needed time to process the transformation. The golden light faded on the 2nd day, but the veins remain. I do not know if they are permanent. Evandra stared at him. 3 days, 72 hours gone, just erased. Where am I? My home. The penthouse of a building I own in River North, secure, warded, the only place I could guarantee your safety while you healed. You moved me without asking. You were unconscious. His voice remained neutral. There was no one to ask. Evandra swung her legs off the bed. The floor was cold against her bare feet, but she barely felt it. Everything felt muted, distant, like her nerve endings had been rewired and were still learning how to interpret sensation. She stood. No dizziness, no weakness. Her legs held her weight easily, and when she took a step she moved with a balance and grace she had never possessed. Like her body had been upgraded, optimized, like she was not entirely herself anymore. What exactly did you do to me? Konstantinos remained in the doorway, keeping distance. Whether for her comfort or his, she could not tell. I told you, I bound my blood to yours. It saved your life, but it also changed your physiology. You are faster now, stronger. Your senses are enhanced. You will heal from injuries that would kill a normal human. But the golden light, the way the bond manifested, that is new. That suggests something more is happening. Something neither I nor Hexworth can explain. But I am not a vampire. No, you still need food, sleep. Your heart still beats, though slower than before. You can walk in sunlight, though it may feel uncomfortable. You are something new, something that has not existed before, as far as I know, and I have existed for a very long time. Evandra processed this. Her medical training, her years of understanding human anatomy and physiology, all of it was suddenly inadequate. She was operating on rules she did not know, in a body she did not recognize. How long do I have? Konstantinos tilted his head slightly. I do not understand the question. How long before whatever you did to me kills me? Rejection? Organ failure? Something. For the first time, something that might have been surprise crossed his face. Dr. Thorne, you misunderstand. You are not dying. You're adapting, thriving. Your body has accepted the bond completely. If anything, you will live longer than you would have otherwise. Decades longer, perhaps a century. Perhaps more, given how unique your transformation has been. The words hit her like a punch to the sternum. A century. She was 42 years old. She had expected maybe 30 more years if she was lucky, and her family history of heart disease did not catch up with her. Now this stranger was telling her she might see the year 2100, might live long enough to watch technology and society transform beyond recognition, might outlive everyone she knew. I did not ask for that. You did not ask for bullets either, yet you took them anyway. The retort was calm, clinical, and it made Evandra want to throw something at his perfect, controlled face. Instead, she walked to the window. The view was Chicago at dawn, the skyline emerging from darkness, Lake Michigan. A sheet of gray steel beyond the buildings. She was high up. 30th floor, maybe higher. She could see for miles, and her enhanced vision picked out details that should have been invisible at this distance. People on the street, cars, the flight of a bird between buildings. I need to go home, she said. You cannot. She turned. Excuse me? Your apartment is being watched by my enemies, by those who want to understand what you are and how to use you against me. If you return, they will find you within hours, kill you or capture you for study. The golden light during your transformation was visible through the hospital walls. Every supernatural being within a mile felt it, felt something new being born. You are marked now, Dr. Thorne, for better or worse. Evandra felt her jaw clench. So I am a prisoner. You are protected. I did not ask for your protection. You did not ask to be shot either, yet here we are, dealing with consequences neither of us chose. The anger that had been building in Evandra's chest found its voice. Do not do that. Do not act like we are in this together. You made a choice. You chose to bring me back. You chose to use forbidden magic. You chose to change me into something I do not understand. I made one choice, jumping in front of bullets, and you made a dozen more without asking if I wanted any of them. Konstantinos was silent for a long moment. Then he stepped into the room. Not close. Just far enough that he was no longer framed by the doorway, no longer positioned to retreat. You are correct, he said quietly. I made those choices, and I would make them again. That is not the point. Then what is the point, Dr. Thorne? The point is consent. The word came out louder than she intended. The point is that you do not get to decide what is best for someone else without asking. Even if you are trying to help, even if your intentions are good, you ask. You give them the choice. And if there is no time to ask, then you let them die with their choices intact. The words hung in the air between them. Konstantinos studied her with those pale eyes. She could not read his expression, could not tell if he was angry or impressed or indifferent. Finally he said, You would have preferred death to this. I would have preferred a choice. Then I have failed you. I am sorry. The apology was unexpected. Evandra had been prepared for argument, for dismissal, for the kind of paternalistic lecture she had gotten from male colleagues her entire career. You do not understand. I know better, trust me. But Konstantinos did not offer any of that. He just stood there, in his expensive coat with her dried blood on the shoulder, and apologized. It disarmed her anger more effectively than any argument could have. "I cannot undo what was done," he continued, "cannot make you human again. The bond is permanent. The golden veins may fade, but the changes to your body will remain. But I can offer you something else." "What?" "Information, training, the tools to survive in a world you did not know existed. And after 60 days, a choice. Stay in this city under my protection or leave. I will provide resources, a new identity, enough money to start over somewhere far from vampire politics. You will still be hybrid, but you will be free." Evandra crossed her arms. 60 days. Enough time to learn the basics, to understand what you are and what threatens you. Enough time to make an informed choice rather than a desperate one. It was more than she had expected, more than she had any right to demand from someone who had, however heavy-handedly, saved her life. But there was something else, something she needed to address before she could even consider his offer. "I need to see my bank account." Konstantinos's expression did not change, but something in his posture shifted, like he had been expecting this. "Of course, your phone is in the nightstand." Evandra retrieved it. Fingerprint still worked. The screen lit up, and she opened her banking app with hands that wanted to shake but would not let themselves. The numbers loaded. Checking account, $73,214. She stared at the screen. 2 weeks ago, she had $31. She knew exactly how much because she had been calculating whether she could afford both coffee and gas. Now there was enough money to cover 6 months of her mother's care, enough to pay off the funeral home, enough to breathe. "You paid my debts." "Yes." "All of them?" "All that I could find. Medical bills, funeral costs. Your mother's memory care facility has been paid through the end of the year. The collection agencies have been settled with." Evandra looked up from the phone. Konstantinos stood perfectly still, watching her with that same unreadable expression. "That was $730,000. "I am aware. You had no right." "I had every right. You saved my life. This is the least of what I owe you." "This is not about debt." The phone creaked in her grip. She forced herself to loosen her fingers before the screen cracked. "This is about control, about you making decisions for me, about you deciding that I needed saving financially the same way I needed saving medically. You were drowning in debt. You were working yourself to exhaustion trying to pay bills you could never pay. I removed that burden. It was my burden to carry." "Why?" For the first time, real emotion entered his voice. Frustration. Incomprehension. "Why would you insist on carrying that weight when someone offers to lift it?" "Because it is mine." Evandra stepped toward him. "Because I earned that debt trying to save my daughter. Because every dollar I paid was proof that I did everything I could for her. Because taking that away, erasing it like it never existed, feels like erasing her." The words came out raw, honest, more honest than she had been with anyone in 2 years. Konstantinos' expression changed, softened, like he was seeing her clearly for the first time. "I did not understand," he said quietly. "Forgive me. I thought I was helping." "I know. But help without asking is still control." Silence settled between them again. But this time it felt different, less adversarial, more like two people trying to find common ground in a situation neither had chosen. "What do you want, Dr. Thorne?" Evandra looked at the phone in her hand, at the numbers that represented freedom she had not earned, at the debt that had been her penance erased by someone else's money. "I want agency," she said finally. "I want to understand what I have become. I want to learn how to survive in whatever world you have pulled me into, and then I want to decide for myself what comes next. Not you, not anyone else, me." Konstantinos nodded slowly. "Then we will train you, teach you, and when the 60 days are complete you will choose. That is my word, Dr. Thorne. And despite what you may think of me, I keep my word." He extended his hand. Evandra looked at it, at the pale skin and long fingers and the implied promise of partnership rather than command. She took it. His grip was firm, cold, controlled. But when their palms touched, something happened. A warmth spread from the point of contact, and for just a moment she felt something. A connection, like a circuit completing, like recognition happening at a cellular level. And for just a flash, less than a second, their skin glowed gold where they touched. Both of them saw it. Konstantinos released her hand quickly, staring at his palm. "The bond," he said softly. "It responds to contact, to proximity. I have never seen this before." Evandra looked at her own hand. The golden veins beneath her skin were pulsing brighter, excited, like her body recognized his and wanted more. "Is it dangerous? I do not know, but we will find out, together." He stepped back toward the door. "We begin tonight, 8 o'clock. Wear something you can move in. I will teach you to control your senses before they overwhelm you." He left before she could respond. Evandra stood alone in the expensive room with its Renaissance painting and its view of a city that suddenly felt foreign and dangerous. She looked at her hands, still glowing faintly, still not entirely her own. But they would be. She would make sure of it. 60 days. She could survive 60 days. She had survived worse. Training began at 8 o'clock precisely. Konstantinos met her on the building's roof. The space had been converted into something between a garden and a training ground. Wooden platforms, open space, strategically placed lights that illuminated without destroying the view of the city spreading out in every direction. Evandra had dressed in the clothes she found laid out in the bedroom: black athletic pants, fitted shirt, running shoes that fit perfectly despite the fact that she had never told anyone her size. She did not want to think about how Konstantinos had known, did not want to consider what else he might have learned about her while she was unconscious. "Your senses have changed?" Konstantinos said without preamble, no greeting, no small talk, just straight to the lesson. "You need to learn to control them before they overwhelm you." "They already overwhelm me." Evandra could hear 17 different conversations from the apartments below, could smell dinner cooking 6 floors down, could feel the vibration of the elevator machinery through her feet. Everything is too loud, too bright, too much. Because you are trying to process everything at once. Your brain is receiving more information than it knows how to handle. We need to teach it to filter, to focus. He moved to stand beside her at the roof's edge. "Close your eyes." Evandra hesitated. Being blind around someone she did not entirely trust felt dangerous, but she had agreed to this, had agreed to learn. So she closed her eyes. "Now breathe, deep. Let the air tell you what is out there." She inhaled. At first, just the expected city smells, exhaust, concrete, the lake's cold edge. But beneath that, something else. Something her new senses picked up that her human nose never would have noticed. "What is that?" she asked. "It smells like copper and ozone, like a thunderstorm but sharper." "Wrong. You are sensing the wards on this building, the protective spells woven into the foundation and walls. Most humans never develop that awareness. Most vampires do not develop it until decades after their turning. You have it after 3 days." Evandra opened her eyes. "That is normal? For a hybrid? There is no normal. You are the first of your kind as far as I know, but it suggests the bond is strong, that my blood has given you more than just physical enhancement, that the golden light was not an aberration, but a sign of something deeper." He turned to face her fully. "Your hearing. Can you hear my heartbeat?" Evandra listened. It took a moment to filter through the ambient noise, but then she found it. A steady rhythm, slower than hers. Maybe 40 beats per minute where a human would be 60 or 70. "Yes." "Good. Now find someone else's, anyone in the building below. Focus on a single heartbeat and follow it." Evandra closed her eyes again. Let her hearing expand. It was like standing in the middle of an orchestra where every instrument was playing a different song. Hundreds of heartbeats, overlapping, creating chaos. She tried to isolate one, failed, tried again. The sounds kept blending together, overwhelming. I cannot. There are too many. Then use your training. You are a surgeon, Dr. Thorne. You have spent years learning to focus on one detail while filtering out distractions. Operating rooms are chaos. Machines beeping, people talking, emergencies happening. But you learned to focus on the one thing that mattered. The bleeder, the tear, the single stitch that would save a life. He was right. She had done this before, just with different senses. Evandra took another breath, imagined herself back in a trauma bay. Imagined the noise was monitors and ventilators and people calling for equipment. Imagined she was hunting for the one critical detail that meant life or death. She found a heartbeat. Female, she thought, based on the slightly faster rhythm. Elderly, based on the irregular spacing, 7th floor, southwest corner. I have one. Hold it, do not lose it. Now tell me what else you can sense about that person. Evandra focused harder. The heartbeat was irregular. Not dangerously so, but with the kind of arrhythmia that came from decades of wear. She could hear breathing, shallow, probably COPD. Could smell medication through the ventilation system, the chemical signature of beta blockers and blood thinners. She is elderly, has heart problems, on medication for it, probably lives alone because I do not hear anyone else in that apartment. Excellent. You just learned to hunt. Evandra's eyes snapped open. I am not hunting anyone. You are learning to track, to identify, to understand your environment through senses that most predators would kill to possess. Whether you use those skills to hunt or to protect is your choice. But you need to have the skills first. It was logical, clinical, and it made Evandra's skin crawl because it was also exactly right. She was a predator now, whether she wanted to be or not. They trained for 2 hours. Konstantinos teaching her to control her hearing, to filter out noise, to focus. Teaching her to use her enhanced vision to see in darkness, to pick out details at distance. Teaching her to trust her sense of smell, which could now detect fear and illness, and lies through changes in human chemistry. By 10 o'clock, Evandra's head was pounding. Enough, Konstantinos said. You have done well, better than I expected. It does not feel like I have done well. Because you are comparing yourself to what you think you should be able to do. Stop. You are 3 days into a transformation that normally takes weeks to stabilize. You are adapting faster than anyone I have seen. He pulled out his phone, checked something. Tomorrow, you will begin combat training with Cassius. He is one of my oldest allies. 640 years old, fought in more wars than most countries have experienced. He will teach you to fight. I know how to fight. Army training, hand-to-hand combat, weapons handling. You know how to fight humans. You need to learn how to fight things that are faster and stronger than you. Things that do not die when you expect them to. The words settled over Evandra like a weight. This was her life now. Learning to fight monsters, learning to become one, maybe. She looked out at the city, at the lights spreading to the horizon. Somewhere down there, people were living normal lives, going to jobs, watching television, worrying about normal things like rent and relationships, and whether they would get that promotion. She would never have that again. Go rest, Konstantinos said. You need sleep. Tomorrow will be harder. The next 3 weeks passed in a blur of training and exhaustion. Cassius was exactly as advertised, a tall man with scarred hands and eyes like flint, who moved with the economical grace of someone who had perfected violence over centuries. He did not coddle, did not offer encouragement, just threw Evandra into scenarios and expected her to adapt. She lost the first 19 sparring matches, lost badly. Ended up on the ground, on her back, with Cassius's practice blade at her throat, while he explained, in his dry, emotionless way, exactly what she had done wrong. You are thinking like a human. Stop. You are faster than you think, stronger than you think. But you hesitate because your brain has not accepted what your body can do. On the 20th match, Evandra stopped thinking, stopped trying to remember army combatives, stopped trying to fight fair. She used her medical knowledge instead. Went for pressure points, for nerve clusters, for the spots where even a vampire would feel pain. She won. Cassius picked himself up from the mat, rubbed his shoulder where she had struck, and nodded. Better. You are learning. Evandra learned other things too. She learned vampire politics from Constantinos during evening sessions, the Council of Seven Elders who governed supernatural activity in Chicago, the treaties that had been signed over centuries to maintain peace, the factions that vied for power. She learned about the Treaty of 1648, signed after the 30 Years' War when vampires and humans had nearly destroyed each other. Learned about the covenant that forbade creating hybrids because they destabilized the careful balance of power. She learned that by saving her, Constantinos had broken laws that carried death sentences. "Why did you do it?" she asked him one night, 3 weeks into her training. "You knew the consequences. Knew you would face the council, knew they might strip your authority. Why risk everything for a stranger?" Constantinos was silent for a long time. They were in his study, a room lined with books in languages Evandra could not read, furniture that looked centuries old, a fireplace with flames that burned without producing heat. "I fought in the 8th Crusade," he said finally. "In 1270, I was 70 years old, still human. We marched for Tunisia, believing we could turn back the tide of history with swords and faith. Instead, disease killed more crusaders than any Saracen blade ever did." He stared into the false flames. "I watched men die from dysentery and typhoid in their own filth, watched kings and peasants rot together in the same mud, watched faith turn to desperation, turn to madness. I survived, most did not, and I came home believing God had spared me for a reason." His hand tightened on the arm of his chair. "I was turned into this 50 years later, in 1320, by a woman who thought eternal life was a gift. She was wrong. It is a curse. But I have tried to use it to be better than I was, to protect rather than destroy, to build rather than burn." He looked at Evandra. "So when I saw you jump, saw you throw yourself in front of bullets for a stranger without hesitation or calculation, I saw something I had not seen in 800 years. Pure sacrifice, no politics, no advantage, just someone who decided another person's life was worth more than their own." His voice dropped. "I could not let that die. Not when I had the power to prevent it. Even if it cost me everything. Even if it created something the world has never seen before." Evandra sat with those words, understood, maybe for the first time, that Constantinos was not just a vampire king playing games with mortal lives. He was someone who had lived long enough to understand the weight of choices, who had made terrible ones and spent centuries trying to atone. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for telling me that." He nodded. They did not speak about it again, but something shifted between them after that night, less adversarial, more like two people who had both seen darkness and were trying to find their way toward something better. The assassination attempt came on the 23rd day. Evandra was in the building's underground training facility, working through combat drills with a practice dummy. Cassius had left an hour ago. She was supposed to be finishing up, but she had gotten absorbed in the rhythm. Strike, block, counter. Her body moving with a speed and precision that still felt foreign but was becoming familiar. The golden veins beneath her skin pulsed with each movement, brighter when she exerted herself, dimmer when she rested, like her body's new energy system visualized. She did not hear the attacker approach, did not smell him until he was already there. What she felt was the shift in air pressure. The sense of presence that her enhanced awareness screamed was wrong. She spun. The vampire was 3 feet away, male, young-looking, maybe appeared 25, which meant he could be anywhere from 50 to 500 years old. He wore dark clothes and had eyes that reflected the overhead lights like an animal's, and he was smiling. "The hybrid," he said. His voice was smooth. almost friendly. "Finally. I have been waiting to meet you, waiting to see if the rumors were true. A woman who glows gold, who changed the king's blood as much as his blood changed her." Evandra's hand found the practice blade on the equipment table. It was wood, not silver, but it was something. "Who are you?" "Nobody important. Just someone who was offered $50,000 to bring you in alive." "Well, mostly alive. They did not specify condition. They just want to study you, understand how you were made, whether you can be replicated." He moved, fast, vampire fast. Evandra barely tracked the motion before he was inside her guard, hand reaching for her throat. But Cassius had trained her for this. She dropped low, went for the knee. Her enhanced strength drove the practice blade into the joint with enough force to crack bone. The vampire screamed, stumbled back. Evandra did not wait. She grabbed a silver-plated dumbbell from the weight rack, the kind Constantinos kept for her training, and swung it like a hammer. It connected with the vampire's skull. Silver burned. The vampire's skin sizzled where the metal touched, and he went down hard, clawing at his face. Evandra stood over him, dumbbell raised for another strike. "Who sent you? Who offered the money?" "Hexworth," the vampire gasped. Blood leaked from his mouth. Black. Wrong. "Hexworth promised $50,000 if I brought you to the holding house on West Monroe. Said the council needed to study you. Said you were too dangerous to—" His words cut off. Not because he stopped talking, because his throat opened. Blood sprayed across the concrete floor in arterial spurts, and the vampire collapsed, already beginning to turn to ash. Evandra spun. Constantino stood in the doorway. His hand was wet with blood. His eyes blazed crimson. "Are you hurt?" His voice was completely controlled despite what he had just done. "No, I am fine. He said Hexworth sent him. I heard." Constantinos looked down at the rapidly disintegrating corpse. His expression was carved from ice. "Hexworth has served me for 320 years. He is my chief financial advisor, my most trusted counselor. He would not betray me for something as simple as money." But his voice, clinical as it was, carried an edge of doubt. Evandra saw it, the moment when absolute certainty cracked. "Unless he would," she said quietly. "Unless there is something we are not seeing, something bigger than just money." Constantinos met her eyes. "We need to review the accounts, all of them. If Hexworth is compromised, if he has been embezzling or making unauthorized payments, there will be a trail. There always is. You want me to look at your financial records? You were paying off $700,000 in debt while working 3 jobs and caring for your mother. That requires understanding accounting, budgets, financial planning. You have skills I need right now, skills I can trust, because you have no reason to lie to me about what you find." It was the first time he had asked her for help rather than offering it. Evandra nodded. "Show me the books." They worked through the night. Constantinos's financial records were Byzantine, literally. Some of the accounts dated back to the fall of Constantinople in 1453, gold and property and investments that had compounded over centuries into a fortune that made Evandra's head spin. But she had learned to track money out of necessity, had learned to spot discrepancies and irregularities because missing a billing error meant another month of debt, another month of drowning. At 4 a.m, she found it. There. She pointed to a line item in a spreadsheet from 6 years ago. Transfer to Blackstone Holdings, $2 million, listed as charitable contribution. What about it? Blackstone Holdings does not exist. I checked. It was registered as an LLC in the Cayman Islands 6 years and 2 months ago, received this single transfer, and was dissolved 3 months later. The money went somewhere, but the trail ends at dissolution. Constantinos leaned closer, studying the screen. "Show me more. If there is one, there are others." Evandra dug deeper, found another, then 10 more. Over 12 years, she found 47 transfers, different amounts from $500,000 to $5 million. Different shell companies, all registered in tax havens, all dissolved shortly after receiving funds. The total came to $920 million. Konstantinos went very still. That is nearly half my liquid assets, half of what I have built over 8 centuries. Gone. And it is gone. Moved through so many layers of corporate structure that tracking it would take months, maybe years, maybe never. Evandra pulled up another screen. But here is the interesting part. Look at the dates. She highlighted a pattern. Every transfer happens within a week of a significant event. A council meeting where your authority was questioned. A territorial dispute with the northern clans, a challenge to your rule. It is like someone was using your own money to fund operations against you, to destabilize you slowly over years. Hexworth would have access to these accounts, would have authority to make transfers for legitimate expenses, infrastructure, security, diplomatic gifts, which means he could hide illegitimate ones in plain sight, could embezzle for years, and no one would question it because he is the one who reviews the books. Evandra sat back. This is not amateur hour. This is sophisticated, long-term, carefully planned embezzlement by someone who knows your systems inside and out. Konstantinos paced to the window. Dawn was coming. The sky was lightening to gray, and Evandra could see him tense as the sun approached. Not painful yet, but uncomfortable. A reminder of what he was. If this is true, he said slowly, if Hexworth has been stealing from me for years, the question is why. He is well compensated, has authority second only to mine, respect, power. What would drive him to this? Greed? Evandra offered. Ambition? Maybe he wants your position. Maybe he thinks he deserves it more than you do. Perhaps. But Konstantinos did not sound convinced. Or perhaps he has been compromised by someone else, used as a tool by enemies I have not yet identified. He turned back to face her. We cannot move against him yet, not without absolute proof. If I accuse my chief advisor of treason without ironclad evidence, the council will see it as paranoia, will question my judgment, may use it as justification to remove me. We need more than just financial records. We need proof of intent, proof of betrayal. Then we keep digging, quietly. Agreed. Konstantinos moved toward the door, then paused. Dr. Thorne? Eva. It was the first time he had used her first name. Thank you for fighting tonight. For this. He gestured at the financial records. You could have left, could have taken the money I gave you and disappeared. Instead, you stayed. You helped. You trusted me enough to look for truth even when that truth implicates someone I have trusted for centuries. Evandra met his eyes. 60 days. I said I would give you 60 days to teach me. We are not done yet. Something that might have been a smile crossed his face. No, we are not. He left. Evandra sat alone in the study, surrounded by evidence of betrayal, and wondered what would happen when the 60 days ended. If she would choose to stay, if she would still be alive to choose it all. Outside, the sun rose over Chicago, and somewhere in the city, enemies were moving. Counting down to violence, Evandra could not yet imagine. But she would be ready. She had to be. Because the alternative was unacceptable, and because those golden veins beneath her skin pulsed with a strength she was only beginning to understand. The attack came in daylight. Evandra had insisted on maintaining some semblance of normal life, had argued that hiding completely would drive her insane faster than any vampire could kill her. Konstantinos had resisted, had listed 17 reasons why leaving the secured building was dangerous, had deployed logic and statistics and cold rational arguments about risk assessment. But he had also learned over the past 5 weeks that Evandra Thorne did not respond well to being told what she could not do. So they had compromised. Daytime only, public places, armed escort within 100 yards, and absolutely no going anywhere alone. The cafe was 2 blocks from Konstantinos' building, a small place called Meridian, all exposed brick and reclaimed wood, where college students hunched over laptops and young mothers met for overpriced coffee while their children played in the corner play area. Evandra sat by the window at 11 in the morning on a Wednesday, watching the city move past. Normal people doing normal things. A reminder that somewhere beneath the supernatural politics and blood magic and assassination attempts, the regular world still existed. She sipped her coffee, could taste every note in it with her enhanced senses, the acidity, the hint of chocolate, the burned edge where the beans had been roasted just a fraction too long. Being hybrid had ruined coffee for her. Had ruined most food, actually, because everything tasted too intense, too much. But she kept drinking it anyway, because it was familiar. Because it was what Dr. Evandra Thorne would do, and she needed to hold on to that identity before it disappeared completely. The bell above the door chimed. Evandra looked up reflexively. 3 men entered, 30s, maybe early 40s, fit in a way that suggested military training or serious gym time. They wore jackets despite the mild autumn weather, and they moved with the kind of coordinated awareness that made Evandra's new instincts scream warnings. She reached for her phone. The lead man pulled a gun, not concealed, not subtle, just drew it from inside his jacket and pointed it at the ceiling. "Nobody move, nobody make a sound. This will be over in 5 minutes if you cooperate." The cafe erupted into chaos, screaming, people diving under tables, a barista dropping a pitcher of milk that exploded across the tile floor in white spray. Evandra stayed in her seat, assessed the situation with the clinical detachment her army training had drilled into her. 3 shooters, tactical weapons, probably modified, exits front and back, but both now covered. 12 civilians in the cafe, including 4 children in the play area. The youngest, maybe 6, the oldest 8 or 9. Hostage situation, professional execution. They wanted something specific. The lead man scanned the room. His eyes found Evandra. "There you are," he smiled. It did not reach his eyes. "The hybrid, the golden woman. We have been looking for you." Evandra did not move. "What do you want? You, alive. Our employer is very interested in studying what you are, how you were made, whether it can be replicated, whether that golden light was real or just a trick of perception." "And if I refuse?" The man gestured to his companions. They moved to the play area. One grabbed the nearest child, a little girl with brown hair and pigtails, maybe 8 years old. She screamed. Her mother lunged forward, and the second mercenary hit her across the face with his gun. She dropped, blood streaming from a split lip. "Then we start shooting people until you agree." The lead man's voice was conversational, friendly almost. "Kids first, then mothers, then anyone else who gets in our way. Your choice, Dr. Thorne. You or them." Evandra felt ice settle into her chest. This was the choice. The impossible choice. Surrender herself to whatever torture and experimentation these men had planned, or watch innocent people die. She stood slowly. "I will come with you." Let them go. "Of course, we are not monsters," the lead man gestured. "Come here. Hands where I can see them." Evandra walked forward, past the mother on the floor bleeding, past the elderly couple huddled under a table, past the college student recording everything on his phone with shaking hands. She stopped 5 feet from the lead mercenary. "Good. Now we are going to walk out of here nice and calm, and you are going to—" The little girl in pigtails started crying. Loud, terrified sobs that filled the cafe. The mercenary holding her looked annoyed. "Shut her up." His partner moved to cover her mouth, and the lead man shot her. The sound was deafening in the enclosed space. The girl's body jerked. Blood bloomed across her white shirt, spreading from the center of her chest. She dropped. The mother screamed. A sound no human should be able to make. Pure animal anguish. Evandra stood frozen, watching the girl collapse, watching blood pool on the reclaimed wood floor, watching life drain from a child who had been playing with dolls 60 seconds ago. She had not expected that. Had thought if she cooperated, they would keep their word. Had thought surrendering herself would be enough. But they had shot her anyway. Had killed a child to prove they were serious, to prove they had no limits. "Now," the lead man said calmly, tucking his gun away, Are we going to have any more problems? Because I have 2 more bullets and 3 more kids. Your choice." Evandra did not answer, could not answer, because she was on her knees beside the girl, had moved without conscious thought. Her hands were on the wound, applying pressure, her medical training overriding everything else. "She is still alive," Evandra said. Her voice sounded far away. "Gut shot, but I can see the entry wound. If I can stop the bleeding, if I can get her to a hospital." "You cannot save her." The lead man stepped closer. "Your hybrid blood does not work on others. We checked. Our employer was very specific about that. Now step away before—" The front window exploded. Not shattered. Exploded. Glass became shrapnel. And then Konstantinos was there. In daylight. His skin was smoking. Literally smoking. Steam rising from exposed flesh. And Evandra could smell burning. Could see his face contorting in pain. But he was there anyway, moving like violence incarnate. The lead mercenary turned, raising his gun. Konstantinos was on him before the barrel came level. His hand closed around the man's throat and lifted him off the ground. The mercenary's finger tightened on the trigger reflexively, shots going wild, punching holes in the ceiling. Konstantinos squeezed. The sound of the man's neck breaking was louder than the gunshots. He dropped the body and turned to the other 2. They opened fire. Konstantinos moved through the bullets, not dodging, just accepting them. They hit his chest, his shoulder, his leg. Each impact staggered him, smoking holes appearing in his coat where the rounds entered, but he did not stop, did not slow, just kept moving forward with the inevitability of a glacier. He reached the first mercenary, grabbed his gun arm, twisted. The arm came off at the shoulder. Blood sprayed in arterial patterns across the exposed brick wall. The mercenary screamed. Konstantinos hit him once, open-palmed, and his head snapped back with enough force that Evandra heard vertebrae shatter. The last mercenary ran for the back exit. Konstantinos caught him in 3 strides. What he did next was not clean, was not quick, was the kind of violence that Evandra had only seen in field hospitals when soldiers came back from close-quarters combat, when they had fought with knives and hands and rage, when death was personal and brutal and designed to send a message. When it was over, Konstantinos stood in the middle of the cafe, surrounded by corpses, his coat shredded, his skin still smoking from sunlight exposure, bullet wounds visible through the torn fabric, bleeding sluggishly. And Evandra knelt on the floor, hands covered in a little girl's blood, trying to save a life that was already gone. "Ava," Konstantinos' voice was gentle, wrong, given the carnage around him. "Ava, you need to stop. I can save her." Evandra's hands kept working. Pressure on the wound, checking for exit injury, running through trauma protocols. "If I can just stabilize her, if I can get the bleeding under control—" "She is dead." No, she is not. I can feel a pulse. That is your pulse you are feeling, in your fingers. She has been gone for 2 minutes. Her heart is not beating. Ava, she is dead." Evandra looked down. The girl's eyes were open, fixed, dilated, no light behind them, just like Nora's had been. Just like Nora's eyes in that hospital room when the machines went silent and the doctors stopped trying, and Evandra had held her daughter's hand and felt the moment her world ended. Evandra's hand started shaking. She had not saved this girl, had not saved Nora, had not saved anyone who mattered. Her name was Sophie, someone said. A woman's voice, broken, the mother being helped up by another customer. Sophie Martinez. She was 8 years old. She wanted to be a veterinarian. Evandra felt arms around her. Konstantinos, pulling her away from the body. She fought him. Wanted to stay, wanted to keep trying because giving up meant admitting failure, and she could not. "I have you." His voice was low, steady. "I have you, Eva. You did everything you could. It was not enough. It never is." Sirens wailed in the distance. Konstantinos lifted her. She did not resist, could not find the energy to resist. Just let him carry her out the back exit, into an alley, away from the carnage and the witnesses and Sophie Martinez, whose name Evandra would remember for the rest of her very long life. Behind them, in the cafe, the body count climbed. Sophie Martinez, 8 years old. Harold Chen, 73, caught in the crossfire when the shooting started. Michael Santos, 23, barista, shot when he tried to call 911. 3 dead because Evandra existed. 3 dead because Konstantinos had saved her life. The cost kept climbing, and Evandra did not know if she could bear the weight much longer. They returned to the penthouse. Konstantinos' skin was blistered from the sun, healing already, the wounds closing as his supernatural physiology did its work. But slowly. He moved stiffly, in pain, though he did not acknowledge it. Evandra sat on the couch and stared at her hands, still covered in blood, Sophie's blood. Type O positive, her enhanced senses told her, healthy except for the bullet that had torn through her liver and kidney and aorta. Dead in under 90 seconds despite everything Evandra had tried. "This is not your fault," Konstantinos said. He stood by the window, as far from the sunlight as possible, despite the heavy curtains. His coat was ruined. His shirt beneath was soaked with his own blood from the bullet wounds that were still working themselves out. One round was lodged near his heart. Evandra could hear it clicking against bone with each breath he took. "They came for me," Evandra said. Her voice sounded hollow. "Sophie died because someone wants to study me, wants to understand how I was made, wants to replicate me. Sophie died because men chose to kill her. You did not pull the trigger." "I might as well have." Konstantinos moved closer, knelt in front of her so they were eye level. "Listen to me carefully. I have lived 824 years. I have seen wars and plagues and atrocities that would break your mind if I described them in detail. And I have learned one thing absolutely. You cannot carry guilt for what other people choose to do. You can only control your own choices. My choice got her killed. Your choice was to jump in front of bullets for a stranger. That was good. That was right. What happened today was not a consequence of your goodness. It was a consequence of evil men making evil choices. Do not let them take your compassion away by making you afraid to use it." Evandra looked at him, at this man who had burned himself in daylight to save her, who had killed 3 men without hesitation, who carried centuries of guilt and was telling her not to do the same. "How do you live with it?" she asked. "The killing, the violence? How do you do what you just did and still look at yourself? By remembering why I did it. I did not kill those men because I wanted to. I killed them because they were going to kill you, because they had already killed a child and would have killed more. I chose the lesser evil. I chose to stop them before they could hurt anyone else." He stood, moved to a cabinet, and pulled out a first aid kit. Not for him, for her. She was not physically hurt, but her hands needed cleaning. He ran warm water in the sink, guided her hands under it, washed Sophie's blood away with a gentleness that should have been impossible for someone who had just committed such violence. "The council has called an emergency session," he said as he worked. "Tonight. Hexworth is pushing for it, claiming that the cafe attack proves hybrids are too dangerous to exist, that I have endangered the city by creating you, that innocent people are dying because of my decision. Maybe he is right. He is not, but he is clever. He knows the council is already skeptical of my decision. This gives them ammunition, gives them justification to act." Konstantinos dried her hands with a towel. "They will demand you be executed or exiled, will claim that keeping you alive violates the covenant, endangers the secrecy we have maintained for centuries, and if I refuse, they will challenge my authority, strip my title, potentially execute me for treason against vampire law." Evandra pulled her hands away. "Then let me go. Give them what they want. I will leave the city, leave the country, go somewhere far enough away that, and they will hunt you anyway. You carry my blood. You glow gold. You are unique in 800 years of vampire history. They will not stop until they have studied you or killed you, probably both. Distance will not save you from that." So what do you suggest? Konstantinos met her eyes. We go to the council meeting. We present evidence of Hexworth's embezzlement. We prove that he has been funding operations against me for years, that he hired those mercenaries today, that he is using your existence as a convenient excuse to finish what he started 6 months ago when he began poisoning me with silver, and we show them that he is the threat, not you. Do we have enough evidence? We have the financial records, 47 fraudulent transfers, $920 million missing, but we need more. We need proof that Hexworth was directly involved in today's attack, that he hired those men, that Sophie's death is on his hands, not yours. Evandra thought about the cafe, about the mercenaries, about the way they had moved and spoken. They said their employer wanted to study me. That means someone with medical knowledge, someone who understands what I am and how I was made. Hexworth witnessed the ritual, performed most of it, saw the golden light. He would know better than anyone what you are. Then we need to find the connection, a money trail, communications, something that links him to those mercenaries. Konstantinos pulled out his phone. I will have my people search his residence, his office, every communication he has sent in the past 6 months. He paused. But Eva, even if we find proof, the council may not care. Hexworth has served for 300 years, has allies among the elders. They may choose to overlook his crimes if it means they can use your existence as justification to remove me, to install someone more traditional, more ruthless. Why are you telling me this? Because I want you to understand the stakes. This is not just about saving your life anymore. This is about whether I keep my crown, whether the city remains stable or descends into civil war as factions fight for power. Your existence has become political whether you want it to be or not. Evandra stood, walked to the window, looked out at Chicago spread below them. I never wanted any of this. I know. I just wanted to save one person, just one, after failing to save Nora. I just wanted... Her voice broke. Konstantinos came to stand beside her. You did save someone. You saved me, and I am trying very hard to make that choice worth what it cost you, worth what it cost Sophie, worth everything. They stood in silence. Then Evandra said, The medical records. What? When you brought me to Mercy Hospital, when Hexworth performed the ritual, there would have been medical records, treatment notes, documentation of what was done. Standard procedure, yes. Where are they kept? Hexworth would have them, in his office at the hospital, along with records of my treatments over the past year. Evandra turned to look at him. Then that is where we start. Because if he has been planning to kill you for 6 months, if he has been poisoning you slowly, there would be evidence in those records. Treatments that should not have happened, medications that do not make sense, silver compounds disguised as something else. Understanding dawned in Konstantinos's eyes. Silver treatments, for arthritis that I do not have, for conditions that do not exist in vampires. Exactly. And if we can prove he was dosing you with silver over months, we can prove premeditation. Prove this was not just embezzlement but attempted murder. Prove that everything he has done leads back to one goal, taking your crown. Konstantinos pulled out his phone again, made a call. Cassius, I need you to retrieve files from Hexworth's office at Mercy Hospital, medical records, specifically anything related to my treatments over the past year. A pause. I do not care if it is locked. Break the lock. We have 4 hours until the council convenes. I need those files in 3. He ended the call. Looked at Evandra with something like respect. You are thinking like a prosecutor now. I am thinking like someone who wants to survive, and who wants the people responsible for killing Sophie Martinez to face justice. Then we will give you both. Cassius delivered the files at 6 o'clock. 2 boxes of medical records, treatment logs, pharmacy orders. Everything documenting Konstantinos's medical care for the past 18 months. Evandra spread them across the dining table and started reading. Her medical training made it easy to spot the inconsistencies. Treatment for arthritis that did not match any known vampire condition. Regular injections of a compound listed as mineral supplement, but with a chemical signature that made no sense. She pulled a specific file. Here, 6 months ago. Months. Hexworth prescribed you a series of treatments for joint pain, 12 injections over 6 weeks. I remember, my hands were cramping. He said it was age, that even vampires experience wear after 8 centuries. Did the treatments help? Initially, then the symptoms returned, worse than before. Evandra checked the compound formula, ran the numbers in her head, cross-referenced with the pharmacology she had memorized in medical school. This is not arthritis medication. This is colloidal silver, suspended in a carrier that would delay absorption, make it accumulate slowly in your system over months, build up in your tissues until your body became hypersensitive. She pulled up another file. And here, vitamin supplements prescribed 2 months ago, except one of them contains trace amounts of blessed silver, not enough to cause immediate symptoms, just enough to sensitize your system further, make you more vulnerable to the bullets those assassins were using at the diner. Konstantinos leaned over the table. His expression was carved from stone. He has been poisoning me for 6 months, preparing my body to be killed by those bullets. If you had not jumped, you would have died, or been so badly injured that your enemies could have finished you while you were helpless, while the silver burned through your system and prevented healing. Evandra gathered the key documents. This is premeditated murder, attempted regicide, and we can prove it. Chemical analysis will show the silver compounds, the timeline matches, the progression of symptoms matches silver poisoning. This is enough. Konstantinos pulled out his phone. Then we present it to the council, tonight, and we end this. The council chamber was older than Chicago itself, carved into bedrock beneath the city, accessed through tunnels that predated modern construction by centuries. The room was circular, with 7 stone thrones arranged in a semicircle. Torches burned with green flame that produced no smoke. 300 vampires filled the gallery, witnesses to whatever judgment would be passed. Evandra entered beside Konstantinos. She wore clothes he had provided, black suit, simple but expensive, armor in its own way. Her hair was pulled back. Her face showed nothing of the fear churning in her stomach. She had walked into operating rooms where soldiers were dying, had made life-or-death decisions under fire, had learned to project calm even when terrified. This was just another battlefield, different weapons, same stakes. The 7 elders sat on their thrones, ancient vampires, each one centuries old. She could feel their power from across the room, could sense the weight of their combined attention as they studied her. Hexworth stood before the council. He looked exactly as he had in the hospital. Gray hair, calm expression. The face of someone trustworthy and competent, someone you would never suspect of treason. When he saw Evandra, he smiled. "Lord Konstantinos, Dr. Thorne, thank you for joining us." His voice was warm, welcoming, like he was greeting old friends instead of people he had tried to kill. The center elder spoke, ancient beyond measure, a woman with white hair and eyes like black holes. "This council convenes to address the matter of Dr. Evandra Thorne, a hybrid, a violation of the covenant, and a threat to the secrecy we have maintained for centuries." She looked directly at Konstantinos. "Lord Konstantinos Draven, you are accused of breaking the first covenant by creating a hybrid. The penalty, as established in 1648, is death. How do you answer these charges?" Konstantinos stepped forward. "I acknowledge I broke the covenant. I do not deny it. But I did so to save a life. Dr. Thorne took 4 bullets meant for me, bullets filled with blessed silver that would have killed me or crippled me long enough for my enemies to finish what the assassins started. She sacrificed herself for a stranger. I could not let that sacrifice be meaningless." "Noble sentiment," Hexworth said. "But nobility does not excuse law-breaking. The covenant exists for a reason. Hybrids destabilize the balance of power, make humans aware of our existence, endanger everything we have built." He gestured to Evandra. "And today's cafe attack proves my point. 3 humans dead, including an 8-year-old child, Sophie Martinez, dead because this hybrid exists, because she draws attention, because she makes us vulnerable to exposure and retaliation. The cafe attack happened because you hired those mercenaries. Evandra's voice cut through the chamber. Silence fell. Hexworth turned to her, still smiling. I beg your pardon? You hired them, paid them to capture me so you could study how I was made, how the ritual worked, so you could understand why my blood glows gold, probably so you could create your own hybrids, build an army loyal to you instead of Constantinos. That is a serious accusation, Dr. Thorne. Do you have proof? We have your financial records. Constantinos stepped forward, placed documents on the council floor. 47 fraudulent transfers over 12 years. $920 million embezzled, all traced back to shell companies that Hexworth created and controlled. Companies that dissolved shortly after receiving funds. Money that disappeared into accounts we cannot trace, but that funded operations against me, against my rule. Hexworth did not look concerned. I am chief financial advisor. I manage hundreds of accounts, thousands of transactions, investments that Lord Constantinos himself authorized. This proves nothing except that I do my job, that I manage his wealth as I have for 3 centuries. Then explain the medical records. Evandra placed the second set of documents down. Silver poisoning, administered over 6 months, disguised as arthritis treatment and vitamin supplements, colloidal silver in doses that would accumulate in vampire tissue, blessed silver in compounds that would hypersensitize the system. You were preparing Constantinos' body to be killed by those assassination bullets. When I jumped in the way, your plan failed. So you tried again, hired mercenaries to capture me during daylight when Constantinos could not protect me without burning. She met his eyes. You have been planning this for months, embezzling money to fund it, poisoning your king, all so you could take his position and control this city yourself. And when your plan failed, when I survived and became something you did not expect, you decided to use me. To turn the council against Constantinos by blaming me for the violence you orchestrated. The chamber erupted, vampires shouting, the elders calling for order, Hexworth standing calm in the center of chaos. When silence finally fell, he spoke. These documents are forgeries, manufactured by Dr. Thorne to deflect blame. She is the threat. She is the one who should be on trial, not me. She glows gold. She is an abomination that should not exist, and she has poisoned Lord Constantinos' mind, made him paranoid, made him see enemies where there are only loyal servants who have served for centuries. He turned to the elders. I have served Lord Constantinos for 320 years, served this city, served all of you, managed wealth and territory and delicate political balances. I would never betray that trust. But this hybrid, this abomination, she has corrupted his judgment, made him willing to destroy loyal advisors to protect her, made him weak. 2 of the elders nodded. Evandra felt ice settle in her chest. They were going to believe him, were going to dismiss the evidence because Hexworth had centuries of loyalty to trade on, because he looked trustworthy and she looked like an outsider, like a threat. The center elder spoke. We shall vote. All in favor of executing the hybrid doctor. Evandra Thorne and censuring Lord Constantinos for breaking the covenant say aye. 3 voices. Aye. All opposed? 3 voices. Opposed. Abstentions? 1 voice. The elder Cassius had mentioned the undecided vote, 3 to 3 to 1. A tie. The center elder stood. By ancient law, when the council is divided, the accused may invoke trial by ordeal, combat or contest to prove innocence. Lord Constantinos, do you invoke this right? Constantinos looked at Evandra. She saw the question in his eyes. This was her choice too. If he invoked the trial and lost, they both died. She nodded. I invoke trial by ordeal, Constantinos said. Very well. Choose your challenge. Trial by knowledge. The covenant was written in 1648, after the 30 Years' War, when humans and vampires nearly destroyed each other and chose law over violence. I challenge Hexworth to recite the clauses that prove his innocence or my guilt. Whichever of us demonstrates greater knowledge of the law we are accused of breaking shall be deemed truthful." It was brilliant. A test that relied on memory and scholarship rather than violence. A test that an advisor who had studied law for centuries should pass easily, unless he had been lying, unless his confidence was based on political maneuvering rather than actual innocence, unless he had spent so long scheming that he had forgotten the very laws he claimed to uphold. Hexworth's smile faltered, just for a moment, just long enough for Evandra to see the crack. "I accept," he said. The center elder gestured. "Then recite. Clause 47 of the Covenant, the clause regarding financial stewardship and advisor authority." Hexworth began. His voice was smooth, confident. He recited the clause from memory, word perfect, explaining how advisors had authority to manage funds for the good of their lords, how they could make investments and transfers without explicit approval for each transaction, how they served as stewards of wealth accumulated over centuries. When he finished, the elder nodded. "Lord Constantinos, your response." Constantinos stepped forward. Hexworth recited Clause 47 correctly, as far as he went, but he omitted the final sentence, the sentence that every advisor knows, the sentence that defines the limits of our trust. He let the word settle. Clause 47, final sentence. "Any advisor found guilty of embezzlement, fraud, or betrayal of trust shall forfeit all rights under this covenant, including the right to trial, and face immediate execution without appeal." The chamber went silent. Hexworth did not recite that sentence because it condemns him, because if the embezzlement is proven, he has no right to stand here, no right to defend himself, no right to anything except death. He should already be dead by the law he claims to serve. The elders leaned forward. "Explain," the center elder commanded. Constantinos pulled out one more document. "This is a ledger we found in Hexworth's private office, not in the official records, hidden behind a false wall that Cassius had to break through. It lists every embezzled transaction by date, amount, and purpose, in Hexworth's own handwriting, with his personal seal, confessing to every crime in detail because he never thought anyone would find it." He placed it before the council. "Clause 47 ends his right to trial the moment embezzlement is proven, but I will give him something the law does not require. A chance to explain why he betrayed me, why he spent 3 centuries earning trust only to destroy it for gold and ambition." All eyes turned to Hexworth. The mask finally cracked. His smile disappeared. His calm evaporated. And what remained was cold rage, centuries of resentment boiling to the surface. 320 years, he said quietly. 320 years I served you, managed your wealth, fought your battles, cleaned up your mistakes, watched you make decision after decision based on sentiment rather than strength. And what did I receive? A salary, respect, but never power, never true authority, never the crown I deserved. His voice rose. "I am older than most of this council, wiser, more capable. I have forgotten more about governance than most of you will ever learn. But I was born human, turned late in life. So I was never considered worthy of a throne, never given the chance to rule despite being more qualified than those born into nobility." He pointed at Constantinos. "You were born a knight, turned young and strong, given everything because of accidents of birth, and you wasted it, grew soft, sentimental, started caring about humans and morals and honor like those things mattered, like they were more important than power and control." Hexworth's hand moved to his ring, a simple silver band that Evandra had never noticed before. "So yes, I embezzled. I poisoned you. I hired those mercenaries. I planned to take your crown and do what you were too weak to do, rule with strength instead of sentiment, build an empire instead of maintaining outdated traditions, create hybrids as weapons instead of treating them as threats." He twisted the ring. A hidden compartment opened. Liquid silver dripped onto his finger. "But if I cannot have the throne, neither will you." He lunged, not at Constantinos, at Evandra, Moving with vampire speed, the silver on his hand aimed at her throat, aimed to kill or corrupt or destroy whatever made her special. Konstantinos intercepted, caught Hexworth's wrist mid-strike. But the momentum carried them both forward, and Hexworth's hand, covered in blessed silver, slammed into Konstantinos' chest, right where the bullet wound from the cafe had not fully healed. Konstantinos screamed. The silver burned through tissue, through muscle, sinking deep. Evandra could smell flesh burning, could see smoke rising from the contact. She moved, grabbed Hexworth from behind, used combat training Cassius had drilled into her, found the pressure point at the base of his skull, and drove her enhanced strength into it. Hexworth staggered. Konstantinos ripped the silver-covered hand away from his chest, and in doing so, grabbed Hexworth's wrist with enough force to shatter every bone from elbow to fingertips. The ring fell, rolled across the stone floor. Hexworth lunged for it. Konstantinos was faster. He grabbed Hexworth's head with both hands, and in front of 300 witnesses, in front of the 7 elders, in front of everyone who had ever served under him, Konstantinos Draven made a choice. He released Hexworth, stepped back, and knelt. The chamber went silent. Evandra stared. Konstantinos knelt on the stone floor, bleeding from the silver wound in his chest that was not healing, and bowed his head, not in submission, in supplication. "In 824 years," he said, his voice carrying through the chamber despite the pain he must be feeling, "I have knelt only for God. But today I kneel before this council, before these witnesses, before the laws I have spent centuries upholding." He looked up. "I was wrong to create a hybrid without permission, wrong to break the covenant, no matter my reasons. The law exists for a purpose, to maintain order, to prevent chaos, to protect all of us from the consequences of individual decisions made in desperation." His eyes found Evandra. "But I am not sorry I saved Dr. Thorne. She showed me something I had forgotten. That true strength is not refusing to kneel. It is knowing when to kneel, when to admit you were wrong and accept the consequences, when to place principle above pride." He turned to Hexworth, who stood frozen, staring at the king on his knees. "You spent 300 years serving me, and I failed to see your resentment, failed to give you the recognition you craved, failed to understand that some wounds run too deep for time to heal. That failure is mine. I acknowledge it." Konstantinos stood slowly. "But your response, your betrayal, your willingness to kill innocents, like Sophie Martinez for power, that is yours. You made those choices. You embezzled, you poisoned, you murdered, and you must face the consequences the law demands." He looked at the council. "So I offer you a choice. Execute me for breaking the covenant. I will not resist. I will accept death as the law requires. But spare Dr. Thorne. She is innocent of everything except compassion. Or spare us both, and let me prove that hybrids can exist without destroying the balance we have maintained, that laws can evolve without abandoning their purpose, that mercy and justice are not opposites, but partners in building something better." The center elder stood. For a long moment she said nothing. Evandra could hear her own heartbeat, could hear the breathing of 300 vampires, could hear Konstantinos' labored breath as the silver burned in his chest. Then, "Lord Konstantinos has confessed, has shown contrition, has demonstrated the humility we demand of all who would lead. He has proven that even kings can kneel, even the powerful can admit fault, even centuries of rule can be questioned and improved." She looked at Hexworth. "But you, Alistair Hexworth, have confessed to treason, to embezzlement, to murder, to attempting regicide. And by Clause 47, which you recited so confidently, while omitting its final judgment, you have no right to trial, no right to mercy, no right to anything except the death you have earned." Her voice became stone. "The sentence is death, immediate, final." Hexworth lunged for the ring on the floor, never reached it. His own body betrayed him. The silver he had touched, the blessed silver meant for Konstantinos and Evandra, had entered his bloodstream through the broken skin on his shattered hand. 4 centuries of life had made him strong, but 4 centuries had also made him vulnerable to the very weapon he had crafted. He collapsed, skin blistering, blood turning black, the poison that he had spent months preparing, that he had used to slowly destroy Konstantinos, now killing him in seconds. His last words were barely a whisper. I deserved more than ash. Nothing remained but dust on ancient stone. The chamber remained silent. Evandra stood beside Konstantinos, watching a man who had lived 418 years reduced to nothing, watching justice and tragedy happen simultaneously. The center elder spoke. The council votes on the matter of Lord Konstantinos and the hybrid doctor Evandra Thorne, all in favor of pardoning Lord Konstantinos for breaking the covenant and recognizing Dr. Thorne as a legal hybrid under his protection. 7 voices in unison, aye? Then it is done. Lord Konstantinos retains his crown. Dr. Thorne is recognized as the first legal hybrid in our history, and the laws are amended to reflect that hybrids created with consent and proper oversight may exist under the authority of a reigning lord. The elder sat. This session is closed. Let it be recorded that on this night, mercy and justice walk together, and that sometimes the strength to kneel is greater than the strength to stand. 6 months later. The rooftop garden had been expanded. More platforms, more space, room for training equipment, and a small medical station where Evandra could work, where she had begun writing the first comprehensive text on hybrid physiology and vampire medicine. She stood at the edge, looking out at Chicago in spring. The city was green and growing, rebuilding from winter, and she could hear it with her enhanced senses, could hear life returning, could hear hope. Behind her, Konstantinos worked with 3 new hybrids, volunteers, humans who had chosen this transformation after seeing Evandra, after understanding the risks and the changes and deciding it was worth it, who wanted the strength to protect their families. The years to see their grandchildren grow, the chance to be something more. Evandra had developed the protocol, had refined the ritual to be safer, more controlled, had learned how to predict which candidates would glow gold like her and which would bond differently, had discovered that the golden light was not random, but a sign of something special, some quality in the human that resonated with vampire blood in unique ways. She had written it all down, every detail, every observation. The book sat on Konstantinos' desk now, bound in leather. Her name on the cover, Dr. Evandra Thorne, M.D. Hybrid Physiology, a Medical Analysis. She heard footsteps behind her. Konstantinos approached, carrying something wrapped in cloth. I have something for you. He unwrapped it, a glass case. Inside, 4 bullets, silver, blessed. The ones that had torn through her body that night in Russo's diner, the ones that had killed her for 47 seconds and changed everything. I had them preserved, he said, as a reminder. Of what? Of the choice that changed everything, of the woman who jumped without thinking because saving a stranger mattered more than her own life, of the courage that 800 years of existence had not shown me, of the moment when everything I thought I knew about strength and weakness was proven wrong. He set the case in her hands. You asked me once how I live with the violence, how I do what I do and still look at myself. The answer is this: I remember why. I remember that I am trying to be better than I was. And I remember that you showed me what better looks like. That a woman with $31 and more debt than hope chose to save a stranger. And that choice saved more than just my life. It saved who I am. Evandra looked at the bullets, 4 pieces of metal that should have killed her. That had killed her for 47 seconds. That had changed her into something she never asked to be, but also something she had learned to value. She had visited her mother last week. The memory care facility in Naperville had been transformed by Konstantinos' money. Better staff, better care. experimental treatments that were showing promise. Her mother had good days now, days when she remembered Nora, days when she could hold a conversation that made sense. "You look different," her mother had said, studying Evandra's face with surprising clarity. "Stronger, like you finally stopped running from something." Evandra had smiled. "I did, Mom. I stopped running from everything." "Good." Her mother had patted her hand with fingers that trembled from age but not from fear. "Your father always said the bravest thing is to stand still and face what's coming. You're doing that now. He'd be proud." The memory still sat warm in Evandra's chest. She had also visited the grave. Sophie Martinez, 8 years old, Meridian Cafe shooting victim. The headstone was simple, white marble, a small angel carved at the top. Evandra had left flowers, white roses, and a note that said, "I'm sorry I couldn't save you, but I promise I'm trying to make your death mean something, to make sure no other child dies because of what I am." The parents had pressed charges against the mercenary company that had hired the shooters. Konstantinos had provided lawyers, resources, money. The case was moving forward. Justice was slow, but it was coming. It did not bring Sophie back, but it was something. And Evandra had started a foundation, the Sophie Martinez Foundation for Child Safety, funded by Konstantinos' wealth, dedicated to protecting children from violence, from exploitation, from the kind of calculated cruelty that had taken an 8-year-old's life to prove a point. It was not enough. It would never be enough. But it was something. "Do you regret it?" Konstantinos asked quietly, pulling Evandra back to the present. The jump. Everything that came after, everything you became. Evandra thought about Nora, about the cafe, about Sophie Martinez, whose name she would carry forever. Thought about the 3 new hybrids learning to control their senses, about the laws that had been changed, about the future that was being built, about her mother's lucid days, about the foundation helping children, about the medical text that would save lives, about the golden veins beneath her skin that pulsed with strength she was still discovering. "Ask me again in 100 years, she said. Konstantinos smiled. "I will hold you to that. Though I suspect I already know your answer, you are not someone who regrets doing what is right, no matter the cost." They stood together as the sun set. 2 beings who should not exist according to the old laws. A vampire king who had learned to kneel. A hybrid who glowed gold and proved that compassion and strength were not opposites. And Evandra thought about a truth that had taken her 42 years and a transformation into something impossible to understand. Real strength was not in never falling. It was in standing back up and saying, "I was wrong, and I will do better." Real courage was not in refusing to kneel. It was in knowing when to kneel and when to stand. And real honor was not in living without regret. It was in choosing again and again to do what was right even when it cost everything. Because sometimes the person the world calls reckless, the woman who jumps without thinking, is the only one brave enough to show ancient kings what honor truly means. The bullets sat in their glass case on Konstantinos' desk, no longer weapons, now proof that one choice, one impossible sacrifice, could change 8 centuries of tradition, that a woman with nothing to lose could teach a king everything he had forgotten about what it meant to be worthy of his crown. That Sophie Martinez's death, however tragic, however wrong, had led to changes that would protect other children, other families, other futures, and that was worth every scar, worth the golden veins and the enhanced senses and the century of life Evandra had not asked for, worth the 60 days that had become 6 months that would become years, worth everything. "The new hybrid Maya," Konstantinos said, breaking the comfortable silence. "She is asking about the golden light, whether she will develop it, whether it means she is stronger or different or better." "What did you tell her?" "That the gold is not about strength. It is about resonance, about some quality in her that harmonizes with ancient blood in a way we do not fully understand. That it makes her different, yes, but not better, just different. Ivandra nodded. That is the right answer. They stood watching the city. And somewhere below, in hospitals and homes and streets they would never see, people lived and died and made choices that would echo through time. Just like Ivandra had, just like Sophie had, in her final moments, when she had looked at Ivandra with eyes that still haunted dreams. Just like Constantinos had 8 centuries ago when he chose to survive the Crusades and return home changed. Every choice mattered, every moment counted, and the golden light beneath Ivandra's skin pulsed with the rhythm of a heart that had stopped once and refused to stop again. A heart that had learned that sometimes the greatest strength was knowing when to jump, when to kneel, when to stand, and when to simply be still, and let the world change around you while you changed with it. That was enough. That was everything.